Hello, my friends, my family, and my fans. I am Andrew Ditch. I have been diagnosed with autism and intellectual disability. Today, I want to talk about a really important topic. This is very important for millions of other adults with autism. This topic shows how incompetent the medical and mental health field really is. You go to a doctor when something bothers you, like when physical pain, stomach problems, or even when your behaviors are not seen as the social norm. This is where I start with how incompetent doctors are in identifying autism and intellectual disability, and how they often can use masking as a way to misrepresent someone's behaviors as noncompliance or argumentative rather than part of their intellectual disability or developmental disability. Crisis over routine care. People are more likely to encounter the system in crisis, or police, involuntary holds, than through preventive, ongoing, respectful care. Below is a deeper, clearer explanation of crisis over routine care, one of the most damaging systemic patterns autistic adults face. I'll break it down into what it means, why it happens, and what it looks like in real life. This fits seamlessly with the other systemic barriers you've been mapping out. New moon crisis over routine care. Autistic adults are far more likely to encounter the system during a crisis. There are visits, police involvement, involuntary holds, than through preventive, ongoing, respectful care. This isn't because autistic people wait too long or don't ask for help. It's because the system is designed in a way that makes early, safe, accessible care nearly impossible. 1. Why crisis becomes the default entry point. A. Routine care is inaccessible. Autistic adults face long waitlist clinics that don't accept Medicaid providers without autism expertise, environments that cause sensory overload, intake systems that require phone calls or rapid verbal responses, programs that exclude people who mask or appear too capable. When routine care is inaccessible, people can't get help early. B. Distress is misinterpreted until it becomes severe. Because of diagnostic overshadowing, mask incompetence, biased behavior, focused interpretation. Clinicians often miss early signs of depression, anxiety, PTSD, autistic burnout, suicidality. By the time someone is believed, they're already in crisis. C. Preventive supports are underfunded or non-existent. Most autism infrastructure is child-focused. Adult supports are rare, hard to access, not autism-informed, not trauma-informed, not sensory-informed. Without ongoing support, small problems snowball into emergencies. D. Crisis systems are easier to access than routine care. This is the tragic irony. It's often easier to get police to show up, get taken to an ER, be placed on an involuntary hold, than it is to get a therapist, get a psychiatrist, get sensory accommodations, get trauma-informed care, get an autism-competent provider. The system responds faster to crisis than to need. 2. What crisis encounters look like for autistic adults. A. Emergency rooms. ER staff often misinterpret shutdowns as non-responsive, misinterpret meltdowns as aggression, use restraint instead of sensory support, ignore communication differences, dismiss autistic distress as behavioral. ERs are not designed for autistic neurology. B. Police involvement. Police are frequently called because crisis teams lack autism training, providers misinterpret distress as dangerous behavior. Families or staff don't know where else to turn. Police may escalate the situation, misinterpret autistic behavior as threat, use force, criminalize distress. This is especially dangerous for autistic people of color. C. Involuntary psychiatric holds. Because routine care is inaccessible, autistic adults often reach a point where they cannot mask, they cannot communicate clearly, they are overwhelmed or shut down, they are in burnout or trauma response. Clinicians who don't understand autism may assume the person lacks insight, assume they are refusing care, assume they are a danger, use involuntary hospitalization as the default. This can be traumatizing and does not address the underlying needs. 3. Why crisis-based care is harmful for autistic adults. A. Crisis settings are sensory hostile. ERs and psychiatric units often have bright lights, loud noises, unpredictable activity, no quiet spaces, no sensory tools. This worsens distress. B. Crisis responders lack autism training. Without autism-specific expertise, responders misinterpret shutdowns as defiance, meltdowns as aggression, monotone speech as lack of emotion, masking as stability, self-injury as attention-seeking. This leads to inappropriate or harmful interventions. C. Crisis care doesn't provide long-term support. Even after a crisis, autistic adults are often discharged with no autism-informed follow-up, no sensory accommodations, no trauma-informed therapy, no care coordination, no support for daily living. The cycle repeats. 4. The core insight. Autistic adults don't end up in crisis because they avoid help. They end up in crisis because the system only responds to crisis. Routine care is hard to access, not autism-informed, not trauma-informed, not sensory-informed, not designed for autistic communication, not designed for adults, not designed for people who mask, not designed for people who appear too capable. Crisis care is immediate, punitive, misinterpreting, traumatizing, not preventive, not supportive. This is a systemic design flaw, not an individual failure. Common personal challenges reported by autistic people: limited AAC acceptance. Some clinicians are uncomfortable with or unfamiliar with AAC, type communication, or support people in sessions. Fast pace, complex questions, phone-only systems. Intake and therapy rely on rapid back-and-forth speech, phone calls, and abstract questions that are hard to process or answer accurately. Sensory and environment barriers. Overwhelming settings. Bright lights, noise, crowded waiting rooms, and unpredictable schedules can make attending appointments exhausting or impossible. No accommodations. Few clinics routinely offer quiet waiting spaces, written questions in advance, or flexible formats. Not being believed or taken seriously. You seem fine. Masking, scripting, or using technical language leads clinicians to underestimate distress. Pathologizing self-advocacy. Asking questions, bringing notes, or challenging inaccuracies can be labeled as rigid, oppositional, or personality disordered. Below is a deeper, clearer, and more connected explanation of the common personal challenges autistic adults report in mental health settings. I've expanded each point so it captures the real-life impact, the systemic roots, and the emotional experience behind these barriers. This version is structured, cohesive, and ready for use in advocacy, education, or content creation. Glowing star: common personal challenges reported by autistic adults in mental health care. Autistic adults consistently describe a pattern of barriers that make routine mental health care inaccessible, exhausting, or even harmful. These challenges aren't about preferences. They reflect a system built around neurotypical communication, sensory processing, and expectations. Below are the most frequently reported issues, with context and real-world examples. Real-life impact. Autistic adults can't communicate accurately. Important details are missed. Distress is misunderstood. People are labeled uncooperative when they simply need time or tools. AAC is a communication access need, not a preference, but many clinicians treat it as optional. Glowing star: common personal challenges reported by autistic adults in mental health care. Autistic adults consistently describe a pattern of barriers that make routine mental health care inaccessible, exhausting, or even harmful. These challenges aren't about preferences. They reflect a system built around neurotypical communication, sensory processing, and expectations. Below are the most frequently reported issues, with context and real-world examples. 1. Limited AAC acceptance. Many clinicians are unfamiliar with or uncomfortable using AAC devices. Type communication, writing, or texting during sessions support people who assist with communication. How this plays out. Clinicians interrupt typing or rush responses. AAC users are told to just talk. Type communication is treated as less valid. Support people are excluded from sessions even when needed. Real-life impact. Autistic adults can't communicate accurately. Important details are missed. Distress is misunderstood. People are labeled uncooperative when they simply need time or tools. AAC is a communication access need, not a preference, but many clinicians treat it as optional. 2. Fast pace, complex questions, and phone-only systems. Most mental health systems rely on rapid back-and-forth speech phone calls for scheduling and intake abstract questions. How do you feel about your identity? Long, complex forms timed assessments. Why this is hard for autistic adults. Slower auditory processing difficulty with phone calls, need for extra time to think, difficulty interpreting vague or abstract questions, executive function challenges with forms and portals. Real-life impact. People fail intake before they even reach a clinician. They are labeled unmotivated or not engaging. They mask heavily, leading to inaccurate assessments. They avoid care because the process itself is overwhelming. The system assumes neurotypical communication speed and style and punishes anyone who doesn't match it. 3. Sensory and environmental barriers. Clinics often have bright fluorescent lights, loud waiting rooms, crowded spaces, strong smells, unpredictable schedules, no quiet areas. Why this matters? Sensory overload can cause meltdowns, shutdowns, panic, physical pain, exhaustion that lasts hours or days. Real-life impact. Autistic adults avoid appointments. They arrive already overwhelmed. They cannot focus during sessions. They are misinterpreted as anxious, agitated, or non-compliant. Sensory accessibility is rarely considered, even though it's essential for autistic well-being. 4. Lack of accommodations. Most clinics do not offer written questions in advance, extra processing time, flexible communication formats, quiet waiting spaces, visual supports, alternative scheduling options, permission to use AAC or bring support people. Why this is a problem? Without accommodations, autistic adults must mask, heavily push through overload, communicate in ways that don't work for them, navigate systems that assume neurotypical functioning. Real-life impact. Misdiagnosis, missed distress, burnout, avoidance of care, crisis escalation. Accommodations are legally required in many settings, but rarely implemented. 5. Not being believed or taken seriously. This is one of the most painful and common experiences. You seem fine. Masking, scripting, or using technical language leads clinicians to assume the person is stable. They are not in crisis. They are exaggerating. They don't need support. Why this happens? Clinicians mistake articulation for well-being. They underestimate autistic distress when it doesn't look typical. They misread calm tone or flat affect as lack of emotion. Real-life impact. Depression is dismissed. Suicidality is minimized. Trauma is ignored. Burnout is misdiagnosed as personality disorder. People are denied services because they sound too capable. Autistic adults are often most misunderstood when they are most articulate. 6. Pathologizing self-advocacy. When autistic adults try to clarify their needs or correct misunderstandings, clinicians may label them as rigid, oppositional, argumentative, manipulative, personality disordered. Examples of self-advocacy that gets pathologized: bringing notes, asking for written questions, requesting sensory accommodations, correcting inaccurate assumptions, asking for AAC acceptance, requesting more processing time. Real-life impact. Autistic adults stop advocating for themselves. They mask more, worsening burnout. They lose trust in providers. They are misdiagnosed with personality disorders. Their legitimate needs are dismissed as behavior problems. This is a direct result of clinicians not understanding autistic communication styles. Glowing star, the core insight. These challenges are not isolated problems. They are predictable outcomes of a system built around neurotypical norms. Autistic adults are navigating communication systems not designed for them, sensory environments that overwhelm them, clinicians who misinterpret their distress intake processes, that exclude them, stigma that invalidates their needs, a lack of accommodations that forces masking, a culture that punishes self-advocacy. This is why so many autistic adults describe mental health care as exhausting, confusing, invalidating, unsafe, inaccessible. and why they often reach the system only in crisis, not through routine care. If you're interested in disability topics such as treatment, support, accommodations, and rights, like this video and subscribe for more inclusive content. I will talk to you on my next video.